I have a declaration that Lindsey Halligan filed with the court, and it's actually worse than I thought, and it involves Pam Bundy. I'm a lawyer in real life, I don't play one on television, so the legal world has been reeling today at the news that the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsey Halligan, did not actually present the second indictment to the full grand jury. Why is this so important? Because the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says that in order to charge someone with a serious felony, a grand jury must find sufficient evidence to charge the person. So no grand jury finding sufficient evidence, no charges. From the moment Lindsey Halligan presented the indictment to the judge, there was something irregular about it. And that's because she initially presented two different documents. There was one indictment where the grand jurors refused to indict James Comey, and it apparently contained 3 counts. Then there was a second indictment with 2 counts where they agreed to indict him, and it was signed by the foreperson. Both actually were signed by the foreperson. Despite this initial confusion, the judge spoke to the foreperson, he spoke to Lindsey Halligan, and he accepted the second indictment with the 2 counts. Then, because of motions filed by the Comey team, there became questions about what happened before the grand jury. And the judges involved in the case discovered that there appeared to be a gap in the grand jury transcript. So Ms. Halligan was ordered to explain why there were these gaps in the grand jury transcript. So I have the declaration that she filed, and I'm going to flip my camera so that we can all see it together, because this declaration would be the basis for any claims that she misled the court, that she lied to the court, that she was dishonest. And we're going to review the declaration, and we're going to review what she allegedly said in court today about her actions. So for today, you all are going to be the grand jurors. You're going to be the jurors in real life, and we're going to try to see what the verdict is on whether Lindsey Halligan was dishonest in her declaration. And I'm also going to show you how Pam Bundy is involved in this. Okay, guys, this is the declaration, and it was filed on November 14th. And I'm just going to scroll through it because when I first looked at it, I immediately noticed something is missing in this declaration. So this is the entirety of the declaration. It's only 6 paragraphs. Y'all notice what's missing in that declaration? If you've ever had to complete an affidavit before, usually the affidavit starts with the following: I declare under penalty of perjury, blah, blah, blah. That's not in this particular declaration. Now, there is a federal statute that governs declarations so that they can be, you don't have to have them notarized. So I went to that federal statute just to check to see if you are required to make that declaration that I swear under penalty of perjury, blah, blah, blah. The statute says that you do. So this is the statute that deals with unsworn declarations, and this permits Lindsey Halligan in a situation that she was dealing with to file this unsworn declaration. But it does say that if executed within the United States, its territories, possessions, or Commonwealth, I declare or certify, verify, or state under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on date and signature. Now, what Lindsey submitted over here, not only does it not contain that language, I declare under penalty of perjury, it doesn't even contain her signature. And I bring this up because it might be relevant if you're wondering if she might be subject to criminal penalties. So legally, Lindsey didn't actually submit a sworn affidavit. It doesn't comport to the proper form, and it doesn't contain her signature. Now, that doesn't matter for bar issues, because if you make misrepresentations to the court, that could be an ethical violation. But, that just kind of jumped out at me. So let's get into the substance of the declaration. So it says, accordingly, I, Lindsey Halligan, submit this declaration to clarify the precise sequence of events on September 25th, 2025, to confirm that the grand jury transcript accurately reflects the full extent of my appearance before the grand jury, and to explain that the period in question consisted solely of the grand jury's private deliberations, during which no prosecutor, court reporter, or other person may be present pursuant to Rule 60 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. There are no missing minutes, contrary to the suggestion raised by the court. Number 2, on September 25th, 2025, I presented the case of the United States versus James B. Comey Jr. to a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia, Alexandria Division. I have reviewed the full transcript of the grand jury proceedings, and the transcript accurately reflects the entirety of the government's presentation and presence in front of the grand jury. There was no additional presentation, interaction, or discussion with the grand jury outside of what is reflected in the transcript. Below is a brief timeline of the events that day. On September 25th, 2025, I appeared before the grand jury. After introducing myself in the case proposed for indictment, the case was presented through testimony. At the conclusion of the presentment, I provided a brief summation to the grand jury and then departed along with the court reporter. The process of presenting the indictment took place from approximately 2:18 p.m. to 4:28 p.m. Approximately 2 hours later, at 6:40 p.m., I was notified by then First Assistant United States Attorney that the grand jury had returned a true bill as to the presented count 2 and count 3 of the indictment, and that the grand jury had not returned a true bill as to the presented count 1. I then proceeded to the courtroom for the return of the indictment. During the intermediary time between concluding my presentation and being notified of the grand jury's return, I had no interaction whatsoever with any members of the grand jury. This time represents the grand jury's private deliberation, which was done in secret, with no one but the members of the grand jury present, consistent with Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6D2. I was never present in front of the grand jury alone. At every moment I was in front of the grand jury, the court reporter was also present. Now, this is what happened in court today. The judge asked the government several times whether he understood correctly that the second indictment was never shown to the entire panel. Yes, that is my understanding, said Tyler Lemons, an assistant U.S. attorney. The judge then calls Lindsey Halligan up to the lectern for additional questions, as she was the only prosecutor who made the government's case to the grand jurors for an indictment. Am I correct? The judge began. No, you're not, Halligan interrupted, clasping her wrists behind her back, and I'm reading this from the Hill. She said the grand jury foreperson and a second grand juror were present in the magistrate's courtroom recalling the proceeding. The judge said he was familiar with the transcript and directed her to sit down. So it came out that the foreperson signed the second indictment. A second member of the grand jury was also present, but the entire grand jury never saw the second indictment. The vote that is reflected on the second indictment is a vote from the first indictment, apparently. So it's a little confusing, but what's clear is that the grand jurors never had an opportunity to vote on the second indictment. All right, that's the evidence. You are now the grand jurors. It is now in your hand. You are the jury. Let me know in the comments what your verdict is. The video was so long I didn't get to Pam Bundy's role, but go to part 2 and I'll explain what Pam Bundy's role is.